The United States has suddenly announced a historic delay in its largest ever arms sale to Taiwan, worth $14 billion. So, what Xi Jinping didn't get during the Trump-Xi meeting in Beijing, has he gotten it now? What's really going on here? What is Trump's attitude toward China, or more specifically, toward the Chinese Communist Party? Should our friends in Taiwan be worried right now? This is the first topic we're bringing to you today. Second, about Trump. Trump's eldest son. Over the weekend, Trump Jr. was supposed to get married on a small island in the Bahamas. Trump was originally planning to attend his son's big wedding, but now he's decided not to go. He can't make it. Why's that? Because he's busy with Iran. Busy with Iran, right? He's not even going to his son's wedding. There's only one possibility. He's busy preparing to strike Iran, isn't he? So is the war going to start this weekend? That's the second topic or news item I want to discuss with you today. Also, the #1 late night show in America is shutting down. I'll tell you just how far-reaching and significant the story behind this is, as it involves a major shift in the current American media and political landscape. Okay, welcome to Good Morning America, brought to you by Fangway. Hello to all our viewers on YouTube, and a warm welcome to our listeners on Hope Radio, Silicon Valley, FM 96.1. If this is your first time tuning in to Fang You on Time, we're glad to have you with us. Every day, we bring you the latest important news as soon as it breaks, not only showing you the headlines, but also helping you understand the logic and changes behind the news. If you don't want to spend a lot of time every day searching for information and piecing together the news, then following Fang Yan Time will help you quickly grasp the situation in the U.S. and major international trends related to America. We also invite our longtime friends to help share the show, so more Chinese-speaking friends can join us and understand this rapidly changing world together. So, yesterday, a viewer named Joy Zhu Liu, left a comment saying, "I'm from Taiwan, and I occasionally come across your videos on YouTube and really like them, so I pretty much watch every day. I get to hear a lot of perspectives and insights that are different from what I hear in Taiwan, and it's very complimentary. It also helps me broaden my perspective on certain things. Thank you for your hard work. I really appreciate it. Wishing you all the best, good luck, and great success." Thank you, Joy. All right, so today, for our friends in Taiwan, especially if you're watching this episode today, after you finish watching, feel free to share it with more friends. All right, so let me see. Let's start by talking about what's really going on with the U.S. temporarily halting arms sales to Taiwan. First, let me say this is breaking news. The Ministry of Defense announced yesterday. Oh, before I get into the arms sales to Taiwan, let me quickly mention another piece of news that's related to yesterday's headlines. The U.S. Department of Defense announced that American reconnaissance planes and surveillance drones have been appearing in large numbers around Cuba. This includes the RC-135 Rivet Joint Electronic Reconnaissance Aircraft, the PA Poseidon Maritime Patrol Aircraft, and the MQ-4C Triton high-altitude drone, all of which have been spotted multiple times near Cuba's coastal waters. What are these aircraft for? They're mainly used for collecting signals intelligence. They're used for radar mapping and tracking military activities. It's actually very similar to what the U.S. did before taking military action against Venezuela. Normally, the Pentagon would keep this kind of thing under wraps as much as possible, but now they're openly making it public. At the same time, since yesterday, we've been reporting on Washington's increasingly tough rhetoric toward Havana, including the White House's heightened vigilance regarding military cooperation between Cuba, Russia, and Iran. So, what does this actually mean? Is the countdown to a mission to capture Castro alive about to begin? That's a key point to watch. I prepared this for the very last minute of today's show, so let's play it for everyone first. All right, now let's get back to our main topic for today, which is about the acting secretary of the U.S. Navy, Gao Xiong. Yesterday, during a hearing of the Senate Appropriations Committee's Defense Subcommittee, he said the following. In order to prioritize the supply of ammunition for Operation Epic Rage, the U.S. has now put a hold on a $14 billion arms sale to Taiwan. The Taiwanese government has stated that they have not yet received any notification and are unaware of the situation. So what did Deputy Secretary Gao Xiong have to say about this? Actually, it was the acting secretary, not the deputy secretary. The acting secretary of the Navy said that at present, we have put the arms sale on hold to ensure we have the ammunition we need for combat, specifically referring to Iran. He added, though, that our reserves are still sufficient. At that time, the senator who questioned him, McConnell, asked, "So will we sell in the future?" That was a very good question. Obviously, that means you have to get to the bottom of the issue. The acting Secretary of the Navy replied that the approval authority lies with the Secretary of War and the Secretary of State, but he didn't actually answer the question. We all know that recently President Trump hinted at this. The $14 billion arms sale to Taiwan might be used as a bargaining chip in negotiations with Beijing. Okay, but acting Secretary of the Navy Gao Shang's statement clearly focuses more on actual battlefield needs. He has his own reasons for that. The reasons differ. Why? This issue is extremely sensitive, especially for our friends in Taiwan. Historically, the U.S.-Taiwan relationship followed the Six Assurances. This set of policy principles toward Taiwan was established by the Reagan administration in 1982. Among them, the second assurance states that the United States must not consult with the Chinese Communist Party regarding arms sales to Taiwan. This time, there might be an exception, which is a sensitive issue. The second point is the Trump-Xi meeting. During the Trump-Xi meeting, what Xi Jinping kept pushing for was to scrap the $14 billion arms sale to Taiwan because if it goes through, it would be the largest single arms sale to Taiwan in history. The previous largest one was the $11 billion deal from last year, which was already the biggest in history. This one would set a new record. Okay, so when they were in Beijing, President Trump didn't respond. Basically, he held his ground. He let Xi say whatever he wanted, but Trump didn't say a word. So is he unable to hold his ground now? Is President Trump about to make concessions? When this news reached Taiwan, it really caused quite a stir. Some people's first reaction was, well, it looks like the U.S. still isn't reliable. Taiwan is facing the possibility of being abandoned. What do you think about this issue? Just now, my friend from Taiwan, whose name is Joy, so the perspective and angle of a lot of news seen in Taiwan is different from what Feng Wei is saying here. So I think it's important to listen to different perspectives to get a clearer picture. Let me share how I see it. I don't see it that way. So how do I look at this? Let's try to break it down logically, okay? To really understand the reasons behind this issue, we first need to ask ourselves a very important question. Is the U.S. actually willing, or would it actually defend Taiwan if needed? I've already talked about this with everyone before, and I've always said the answer is 100% yes, they are willing. The CCP is now the top security threat and competitor to the U.S. Since establishing ties in 1979, things have changed, and that is today's reality. So when it comes to facing the United States' #1 security threat and competitor, Taiwan is right at the front line for the U.S., and is also an essential part of the so-called First Island chain, which is crucial for blocking the Chinese Communist Party's navy. That's the first reason. The second reason is that for the U.S., Taiwan represents a core, fundamental interest, something the U.S. absolutely can't give up. It's also impossible for the U.S. to just ignore it. Secondly, Taiwan produces 90% of the world's high-end chips, the chip manufacturing industry. That means it's a key part of the supply chain for many important American industries. In this regard as well, it's at the core of U.S. national interests. Third, regarding East Asia, if the U.S. lets the CCP take Taiwan, America's global credibility and regional stability would both be destroyed. If the CCP takes Taiwan while the U.S. stands by, do you really think they'd stop there? Would their advance, their pace, their iron heel really stop? So this would immediately bring instability to all of East Asia, and this is exactly where America's core interests lie. The fourth point, of course, is moral responsibility. The consistent policy of the United States across all administrations has always been to defend Taiwan. That's a fundamental premise. Although every president says this is a policy of ambiguity, what they call strategic ambiguity. But remember, Biden has said 2 or 3 times that the U.S. would defend Taiwan because, well, Biden is getting older, and maybe his mind isn't as sharp as it used to be. He doesn't always think things through completely. So when he speaks, it's kind of like he just says what he really thinks. He doesn't hold back or filter what comes out of his mouth. And when he doesn't filter what he says, that's when you hear the truth. Of course, Biden knows that the U.S. will definitely help defend Taiwan. So when reporters ask him directly, he just says yes. Then the State Department has to come out and try to cover for him to walk back what he said. That's the situation, and it really shows what's going on. Especially when it comes to Trump. Trump would be even more likely, 100% certain to take action. During Trump's time, it was always Trump hitting others, never the other way around. I know that sounds blunt, but it's the truth. Trump absolutely would not let the Chinese Communist Party attack Taiwan. So you see? In Trump's first year in office, he approved an $11 billion arms sale to Taiwan, the largest in history, not just since 1979, but the biggest ever in U.S. history when it comes to arms sales to Taiwan. You can really see Trump's determination from this. He wanted to arm Taiwan. This shows Trump's resolve, and this demonstration is him taking action. Remember, with Trump, don't just listen to him. He's a businessman who says anything in negotiations. Watch his actions to see his true intent. All right, so you might ask, if he's willing to defend Taiwan, then why do this? Because, in my view, this $14 billion really isn't urgent. Even though it seems like a big amount, it's not urgent. It can wait a bit. Why? Because, well, there are a few reasons. First, last year's 110 and 111 arms sales already provided Taiwan with important defense guarantees. Mainly, they supplied ground and naval strike capabilities. The main goal is to prevent the most critical and dangerous situation, an amphibious invasion by the PLA. So, things like the HIMARS missile systems, the ATACMS missiles, self-propelled howitzers, and so on were included. These weapons can directly strike landing operation vessels and capabilities. So this is the most important thing to have. That's the first point. Second, this $14 billion is actually focused on high-end air defense and asymmetric capabilities. Mainly, it's to prevent missile or drone attacks from the Chinese Communist Party against Taiwan. So this includes air defense interception missiles, counter-drone systems, and related equipment, as well as associated command systems. That's why there's not such an urgent rush, and these are similar types of things. High-altitude defense? Well, the Gulf countries in the Middle East really need it because they're actually under attack today, right? Taiwan isn't being attacked right now, but those Middle Eastern countries are. And then there's the Russia-Ukraine war, which also needs it. You might say, hasn't the U.S. already stopped aiding Ukraine? Actually, no. It's not direct aid, but they're still selling. Europe is buying and then sending it to Ukraine. So if Europe and Ukraine need it, they'll buy it through Europe. Of course the U.S. wants to sell. What else can they do? If you don't sell and Ukraine can't hold out, then the trouble just gets bigger, right? So for these weapons, the stock is indeed tight, and demand is greater than supply. It's basically a seller's market. That's just a fact. But the thing is, the Chinese Communist Party is even more anxious about this $14 billion. So Trump thinks he can use it as a bargaining chip. Okay, that's the second reason. There really is a shortage of these things. And there's another reason. As everyone knows, over the years, the U.S. has consistently sold arms to Taiwan. Even after a deal is signed or approved, delivery isn't guaranteed. Time is tight and Taiwan isn't rushing. Currently, the U.S. owes Taiwan $30 billion in military gear. With contracts signed and paid, the equipment still hasn't arrived. This $14 billion is also for the future. No matter what, they can't deliver it now, even with immediate approval. Yeah, so this $14 billion is actually useful for negotiations, for U.S.-China negotiations. Recently, Trump said in an interview with Fox News that arms sales to Taiwan are a bargaining chip in negotiations with the Chinese Communist Party. He's already said it outright. As for what they're negotiating, everyone knows that the current U.S. policy toward China, put simply, can be summed up in 8 Chinese characters. Maintain the relationship, do some business. So what is the relationship between the two sides? From the American perspective, it's what they call transactional diplomacy. What does transactional diplomacy mean? It means a deal-based approach to foreign policy. Each deal is handled as it comes. There's no need for continuity. Each deal stands on its own. Simply put, it's about grabbing what you can with no future expectations. Trump signed orders in Beijing for over 200 planes, soybeans, and rare earths. But after signing, the CCP's word meant nothing. Could Trump have seen this coming? Of course he could. So for the CCP, not keeping their word is just business as usual. In 2019, they also signed a bunch of agreements, but in the end, it was useless, right? So basically, through negotiations, including this $14 billion arms sale, they're holding the CCP to it, making them obediently buy things. After they've bought everything and paid for it, with both the goods and the money exchanged, then Trump pushes forward with more arms sales to Taiwan. I think that's what it's all about, okay? And besides, Trump still has cards to play. What cards? As everyone knows, one of the hot news topics these days is that Trump is talking about having a conversation with Lai Ching-te. This has also become a factor in U.S.-China relations. This is a new flashpoint. After Trump returned from Beijing, he told reporters that he wanted to talk to the person in charge of Taiwan. Then, the day before yesterday, when the media asked him if he planned to call Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te directly, he said, "I'll talk to him. I'll talk to everyone." So basically, what this means is, if Trump is willing to have a conversation with Lai Ching-te, it clearly means something. Not only can he use arms sales to Taiwan to get things from the Chinese Communist Party, but he can also use this conversation with Lai Ching-te as a bargaining chip to put pressure on the CCP. Because I've seen a lot of Taiwanese media saying that what Trump is doing is primarily putting pressure on Taiwan and only secondarily on the CCP. But I don't think that's the case. Of course, when it comes to Taiwan's independence, that part is definitely a form of pressure. Trump doesn't want Taiwan to declare independence. But now, Taiwan says that the Republic of China is already independent in itself, and that actually makes sense. I think as long as it stays at that point, then basically it won't cross any of Trump's so-called red lines. Whether it's talking with Lai Ching-te or the $14 billion arms sale, I think both are ways to put pressure on the Chinese Communist Party. Because if there is dialogue, then that means giving Taiwan more space. We all know that if the presidents, Taiwan's president and the U.S. president, can discuss things and have conversations, that's something that hasn't happened since the U.S. and China established diplomatic relations in 1979. In 2016, it's true that President Trump and President Tsai Ing-wen had a phone call, but at that time, Trump wasn't president yet. He was just the president-elect. Even so, the Chinese government still made a big deal out of it that year, lodging a strong protest. So if Trump, as the sitting U.S. president, were to have a conversation with President Lai Ching-te, that would be a breakthrough against the diplomatic blockade that the Chinese Communist Party has imposed on Taiwan. This would be the U.S. president personally breaking through without having to send this or that secretary. He would do it himself. So in fact, this is actually a good thing. As for things like arms sales to Taiwan being postponed, I actually think, in my interpretation of Trump, that in the long run, his stance absolutely won't change. It's just being used as a tactic for now. That's how it is. Of course, our friends in Taiwan are worried because they care, and that's understandable. But honestly, I don't think it's a big deal. Of course, the fundamental issue here is whether you trust Trump more or doubt him more. Is your main stance trust or suspicion? People suspect Trump because he's a businessman, and they're seen as trading anything, right? But I disagree. Some value integrity over being unscrupulous. I believe Trump is a businessman with integrity, not a dishonest one. And you have to look at his actions. So I think regarding this issue, the uproar it is causing Taiwan is, of course, huge. I totally understand that. But I really think there's no need to worry about it. Honestly, there's nothing to worry about. All right, let's move on to the next topic and talk about what's going on in Iran right now. What's the situation in Iran? All right, so here's the situation with Iran. As of now, the agreement still hasn't been reached. Up until yesterday, Iran and the United States still hadn't come to an agreement. However, a senior Iranian source told Reuters that the differences between the two sides have narrowed, and Iran is currently reviewing the latest peace proposal put forward by President Trump. The media also reported that Iran's uranium enrichment activities and Tehran's control over the Strait of Hormuz remain among the main sticking points in the negotiations. There's no doubt about that, right? It's only natural that this would be the case. So what about Iran? Right now, Iran is also working on setting up a toll system in the Strait of Hormuz. And at the same time, they're trying to persuade Oman to join in. What does that mean? Well, the north side of the Strait of Hormuz is Iran, and the south side is Oman. Basically, what they're saying is, let's join forces and split control of the Strait of Hormuz between us. Getting rich together, right? But U.S. Secretary of State Rubio issued a warning today saying that no country can accept this approach. He said if you do this in the Strait of Hormuz, then the same thing will happen in the other 5 major straits around the world. Others might say, fine, we'll also collect tolls and passage fees. If everyone follows suit, what's next? Free global trade would end. This is another point of contention. Trump stated yesterday that the precondition for U.S.-Iran talks is that Iran cannot possess nuclear weapons. And Iran also cannot keep highly enriched uranium. If the negotiations fail, the U.S. will take tough measures. But this has been said for several days now. Trump said, almost quoting him directly, if we don't get a proper response, things will move along very quickly. We're already prepared to strike. The answer we want must be a 100% perfect response. If we can get that, we'll be able to save a lot of time, effort, and most importantly, lives. So you can see, Trump really doesn't want anyone to die. He doesn't want to go to war. That's why he's deployed so many troops, just to use the threat of war to win peace through strength. Then a reporter pressed Trump, asking, "How long are you planning to wait?" Trump said it could be very soon, or it might take a few days. So very soon means immediately, and a long time is just a few days. So that's the little side story here. This weekend, Trump's eldest son, Trump Jr., is getting married. He's getting remarried. His fiancée is named Bettina Anderson, so the two of them are going to get married on a private island in the Bahamas in the Caribbean. Trump had already said he would go, but when reporters asked him again yesterday, he said, "If I go, I'll get criticized to death. If I don't go, I'll also get criticized to death." What he meant was, if he goes, it'll delay his own affairs, but if he doesn't go, his son will be mad at him. He said, "He wants me to go, my son wants me to go, but it's just a small private wedding. I'll try my best to attend, but I'm really busy right now." He said, the timing isn't great for me. I've got the Iran situation and other things to deal with. Not even going to his own son's wedding. Not even going to his son's wedding. How should we interpret this? If you ask me to interpret it, I was actually talking about this with a colleague from the news industry just yesterday. I said in one sentence, America is getting ready for war this weekend. Since it's critical, there's no way he leaves. This weekend, he must decide whether to fight if talks fail. It's a big deal to watch. I think war on Monday is highly likely. That's just my take. No inside info, just a possibility. If they reach an agreement, it'll happen in 2 stages. Stage 1 is a ceasefire and lifting blockades on both sides. Stage 2 involves handing over enriched uranium, which will be a tough nut to crack. I think Iran absolutely doesn't want to hand it over, while Trump is dead set on getting it. So what do you do in that situation? I honestly can't think of a solution. What do you think should be done? What can Trump do? Okay, let's take a look at this next bit of news. It's a small story, but it's actually quite telling. It shows Trump's way of governing. Trump announced that the U.S. would deploy 5,000 troops to Poland. What's the background here? The background is that the U.S. has already withdrawn 5,000 soldiers from Germany and is also considering reducing the number of troops stationed in Spain and Italy. And recently, the U.S. also said it would deploy 4,000 American troops in Poland. The troops are supposed to rotate in and out, but once they're sent away, they just don't come back. Poland got anxious and asked, "What's going on?" Then someone named Vance said, "We have no issues with Poland at all. We're just considering this and that," and then that was the end of it. Today's news is that President Trump tweeted saying that based on the successful election of Poland's current prime minister, actually president, named Duda, who is a conservative president, he said, "I was very proud to endorse his campaign and of our relationship. I am very pleased to announce the U.S. will send an additional 5,000 troops to Poland, which means that instead of the original 4,000, now 5,000 are being sent back. So it's even more than before." So that's the current situation. This was reported by the Army Times. I'm not sure if this Army Times is the European, Polish, or American edition. Anyway, it quoted information from 2 U.S. officials. So will this deployment actually happen? All right, now here's my commentary. I think this move really has Trump's style. He treats stationing troops in a country like a reward, like handing out candy. Before, this candy was given out freely. Everyone got some, just like on Halloween when kids come by and you give them candy. But now, that's not how it works. It's not free anymore. There are conditions. Only if you're good to the U.S. will we station troops and give you candy. Otherwise, you get nothing. Notice this? There's something unusual here we might overlook. This attitude is actually the opposite of history. In the past, stationing troops in another country usually meant they weren't listening or behaving, right? The purpose was to keep you under control. And for any sovereign nation, having foreign troops stationed on your soil, how could that ever be a good thing? But now, look at what's happening. Trump says, if you behave, I'll station troops in your country. In this case, that country is Poland. They're all eagerly waiting for the U.S. military, And it's not just Poland. Countries like Czechoslovakia, the 3 Baltic states, and so on. Even places like Taiwan and the Philippines. They're all looking forward to the U.S. military coming. Everyone's hoping the U.S. troops will show up. So what does this show? It shows 3 things. First, the U.S. military can bring security. Second, the U.S. military also brings local spending because wherever U.S. troops are stationed, they pay for everything themselves. Don't they pay for it themselves? That's another small benefit. Security is the big benefit, and the spending they bring is a smaller one. Third, the U.S. military definitely doesn't disturb the locals, right? So this is nothing like what the CCP used to say about the U.S. military in Beijing or Beiping, making up stories about them assaulting female students or things like that. Those are all nonsense, just made up. Even the incidents that happen in Japan or South Korea are extremely rare and isolated cases. So basically, the U.S. military is a very well-behaved force. Wherever they are stationed, they don't disturb the locals. They bring benefits, not harm.